Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is here. We're inside a month to the NFL draft. He has his Eagles mock draft up at InsideTheBirds.com. Love this time of the year. Get a chance to kind of talk one of my favorite events with the guy who I think has one of the best minds for the draft. Andrew DiCecco joins me now on the Sports Bets. It's officially draft season, Andrew. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Mike. How are you, man?
All is good. The draft season, one of your favorite times of the year. And, let's just overview 32. A lot of times you're at the end of the first round. What's the big difference? Is this a year, though, where you think landing a guy at 32, is this a deeper draft than you've seen in the last couple of years?
Yeah, it's pretty deep, and that's why I don't believe the Eagles would trade out of that spot. The fifth year is valuable, so I think that they would be more inclined to either stand pat or even trade up. And there should be a lot of different players that should be available at 32, so they should have their sort of pick of the litter, so to speak.
Yeah, you have Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle, Ole Miss in that spot. And that's a position where obviously the Eagles, I want to kind of, handicap that position right now. As a guy gets drafted at 32, especially a player like Walter Nolan, is that a spot where a first-year player can get on the field immediately, or do you like what they have there with Maro Ojomo, Thomas Booker, and Gabe Davis behind JalenCarter and Jordan Davis?
Yeah, oddly enough, I've gotten just a slight bit of pushback on defensive tackle that suddenly some folks don't believe that it's a need. But Maro Ojomo, he played the same amount of snaps, identically, percentage-wise, as Jordan Davis. So Jordan Davis is going to be your two, but he has a certain limit. He's a one-dimensional player, offered different signs of slight development later in the season, but the point remains that loss of Milton Williams is going to be pretty significant. For the Eagles to be able to run the defense that they want and have that rotation and be able to help JalenCarter a little bit, it behooves them to add another defensive tackle. Now, there's a guy named Calais Campbell who's still out there who's a little bit older but would serve that room well and be a veteran presence. But I think it would really serve them well to add a defensive tackle who can give you Milton Williams snaps, because Milton Williams played the second most snaps of all the defensive tackles.
Andrew DiCecco's with us. If they, how comfortable are you right now, Andrew, with that edge rushing spot now that Josh Sweat's not here? You got Jalen Hunt, you got Bryce Huff, they brought in, obviously, Uche and Ojulari. If they didn't bring in a high-drafted edge rusher, would you be comfortable with that, or is that a spot that you think they need to target in round 1 or 2 or 3?
I still believe that they should target that position in rounds 1 through 3, because I don't know how you feel about it, but I'm not particularly optimistic about Josh Uche. I don't know if you want to slot him into the roster. He's going to have to fight to make the team. And right now he's the 4th edge rusher, and sort of an enigma a little bit, because you have to go all the way back to 2022 where he had 11.5 sacks. You can question the scheme fit last year, but he's bounced around a little bit and hasn't been productive and hasn't been healthy. Those are the facts. And I just think that for anyone to bank on him being the player that he was in 2022 is kind of presumptuous. So I think the Eagles need to furnish that room by adding another younger player, and then I think they would have enough there in terms of rotation, because I am very high on Jalen Hunt, and I think Nolan Smith is ready for stardom. I don't really care what anybody else. That's a term that maybe other people don't feel the same way, but I think Nolan Smith is headed for stardom.
When you say that, I'm glad you brought him up, because we were having this conversation earlier in the week. He had, 6.5 sacks last year, then he went on a little tear in the play. Do you look at him as like a 10.5 sack guy, 12? I mean, what do you think his ceiling is when you say stardom?
I think he can get 12 sacks.
Wow, all right.
And by NFL standards, that's a star. And
yeah, absolutely.
You saw what he did in the postseason. He's a tough guy. I think he's starting to play with a lot more confidence. He has a lot more of a refined pass rush acumen. He's setting the edge. Just playing with a lot more violence and flowing the football with urgency. And when things start to come together, I think you're starting to see that he's hitting his stride as a player. So I do believe that he's got double-digit sacks. perennially can be a double-digit sack guy.
All right, I'm reading your mock draft over Tom. I see a safety at the second-round pick. Would they consider a safety? Is there even one to consider at 32? Because I don't want to put words in your mouth. I don't know how you feel about this, but is that the area on defense that has the biggest question mark right now, that spot where C.J. Gardner-Johnson is no longer there, or do you like what they have left over?
Yeah, safety is a big question mark. Linebacker right now is a big question mark. Because you don't know about the health status of Nakobe Dean. He could be ready for week 1. If you ask him, that's his target. But the reality is that's a pretty lengthy injury. So we have to wait and see. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., they like what they've seen from him behind the scenes, high IQ player, good at reading and reacting, has to get stronger, has to develop his play strength a little bit. So, and then beyond that, they have Dallas Gann, who's on the practice squad. Van Sumeren's now a fullback. They don't have a lot there at linebacker either, but they're not going to take a linebacker in the first round. But at 32, that's where the trade-up could be. If there's a player like Malachi Starks from Georgia who falls, or Nick Emenwari from South Carolina who trickles down the board a little bit, then, depending on – I don't know that Emenwari would really fit the Eagles' defense. He's more of a Cam Chancellor type of safety, and he doesn't really strike me as a VicFangio type of player, but Malachi Starks fits everybody's defense, and the Eagles like him quite a bit, so it wouldn't surprise me if he falls within striking distance, if they're a little bit more aggressive. But a guy that I like in the second round is Andrew Makuba from Texas, high IQ player, immensely intelligent, one of the smartest defensive players in the draft from my a little bit undersized, about 5'11", 190, but a movable chess piece. I think he can add some strength and size to his frame, had 5 interceptions last year, and just alignment versatile, which is, it's quintessential for Vic Fangio.
What of the guys that are there now, Sidney Brown, Lewis Seen, and McCollum, is there a guy that you like the best out of that group?
Well, personally, I like Tristan McCollum, but I think that, Sidney Brown has the most upside of that bunch, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of folks that are excited about Lewis Seen, and some even think that he's going to be a lock, but let's not forget this is the same player that the Minnesota Vikings released at the end of training camp last year, and he was on the practice squad for the better part of last season with the Buffalo Bills. He has an extensive injury history. He's going to be given every opportunity, just like everybody else. But I think Sidney Brown, drafted in the third round, he had the injury last year, which sort of threw a wrench into his development, and he was relegated to special teams. But I like his ability. He needs to play with more restraint and play within the structure of Vic Fangio's defense, or he's just not going to see the field all that much. McCollum is the one who has the safest floor, I guess I would say, steady, and somebody that Vic Fangio trusts, but he doesn't have the upside of a Sidney Brown or even a Lewis Seen. But to answer your question, I personally like Tristan McCollum, but of the players there, Sidney Brown has the highest.
Well, and Andrew, we saw last year when somebody went out, McCollum was the first guy in, generally not Sidney Brown. I don't know if that was injury related.
He's assignment sound, and for Vic, he's going to go with a player that he knows exactly where they know where they need to be. He doesn't have to worry about them missing tackles or over pursuing or being a heat-seeking missile that's going to take poor angles to the ball carrier. Tristan knows exactly where he needs to be. Sidney, though, has the ball skills. He has more big play ability.
All right, one other spot. We don't know the outlook for Dallas Goedert, but a lot of people thinking tight end, whether Goddard's here or not. I know they signed 2. In the third round, you went Terrace Ferguson from Oregon at tight end. Kind of give us your overview on where that position stands right now, because Ferguson in the third round, that would raise some eyebrows of, okay, is this a guy that's going to play right away? Yeah,
well, last year I thought the Eagles really needed to draft a tight end, and it seemed like that was their makeup. That was their MO. You saw it with Zach Ertz. You saw it with Dallas Goedert, and it seemed like this was going to be the time. Dallas Goedert's turning 30. He turned 30 in January. He obviously, without some sort of restructure, to me, it's hard to fathom the Eagles being able to stomach what he's going to be making this year, but we still have a little bit of time to see where that's going to go. But the point being is there's not a lot behind Dallas Goedert. Grant Calcaterra, nice player in a spot role. He did some good things, but he's very limited. Doesn't give you anything as a blocker, though he is willing. Good pass catcher. But again, if he's your starter, he's going to get exploited. E.J. Jenkins, I think the world of him. I think he could be the third tight end. But again, we're talking about a depth player. He's not equipped to be a 2 or a starter, in my opinion. And then Harrison Bryant and Kylan Granson, they're going to have to scrap to make the team. I think Harrison Bryant of the two has a little bit more upside, a little bit more to offer as a blocker, has a better frame, 6'5", 230. Granson's more of an H-back type of build. I was kind of underwhelmed with both players, but they're going to have every opportunity, just like C.J. Uzomah did last year, and E.J. Jenkins and Jack Stoll. They're kind of in that group.
A couple more with Andrew DiCecco here from Inside the Birds, Football at 4. Is there a player right now that you have your eye on that you would trade up for?
Starks, Malachi Starks, just because I think that he can be a difference maker. He can be that C.J. Gardner-Johnson and give that back end some more playmaking ability to complement Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell.
All right.
And I don't know that Reed Blankenship is probably, he shouldn't. I don't know that he's a number one safety. I think he's best suited to be a complementary piece. And I mean, there's a lot of players that I like that are going to be there at 32 in all likelihood. Donovan Zaraku, the edge rusher from Boston College, and I also would not rule out the Eagles taking a corner at 32. They brought in Maxwell Harrison, the corner from Kentucky, ran a 4.2, really athletic, 5'11", 185, good ball skills. Reads the eyes of the quarterback exceptionally well. And there's a guy named Siobhan Rebel that I really like from East Carolina that could be there too. If the Eagles are adopting that best player available approach, knowing that they need another corner, maybe to challenge Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson, well, I wouldn't rule that out either.
All right. He's Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. We're getting closer to the draft. We're going to start counting it down and getting his thoughts on it. Check out his full 7-round Eagles mock. There's only up to the 5th because they don't have a 6th or a 7th, 4 5ths. That's over at InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, thanks, buddy.
Thanks, man.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, of course, here on the Sports Bash, and you can check out his work over at InsideTheBirds.com.